Okay, thanks. And now John Curran. Thanks for the, glad we had some lovely discussion. So John Curran's coming up on a slightly compressed time frame, but we will give him a little consideration before lunch, even if we have to slide slightly to the right. He's going to talk about another exciting piece of the future of the internet, as is our kind of emerging mini theme this morning. And thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go quick because I know I'm between myself and lunch, but I need to give you guys an update on something fairly important. So, stewardship and accountability for Internet identifiers. Let's see. IANA. It's all about IANA and the stewardship of the IANA. Throughout its history, the Internet system has employed a central Internet assigned numbers authority. This is where the 1,000+ registries get recorded. When I mean registries, I mostly mean protocol registries, because more than 1,000 of them are protocol registries, port numbers, option codes, things like that. But some of them are pretty important. One of them is the DNS root zone, and then there's the v4, v6, and ASN registries. So we have IANA handling central name registries. Names is the DNS root, numbers and protocol parameters. There are two agreements that provide for IANA services. One of them is the U.S. government NTIA IANA functions contract with ICANN, which says ICANN will be the IANA operator and will maintain these registries. There's also an MOU between the IETF and ICANN saying that ICANN will be the IANA operator. The MOU, RFC 2860, also notes some of these identifiers, names and numbers, have policy issues and don't conflict IETF standards, but otherwise handle it. So something interesting happened last year. In March of last year, the US government announced that it wanted to transition the oversight of the IANA functions contract to the global multi-stakeholder community. So again, the US government's been sort of a stabilizing influence over all of this, been the one coordinating these registries. So coordinating has a different meaning for names, numbers, and protocols. I don't think they did anything with protocols. They've done very little with names, with numbers. With names, they occasionally get involved. But the reality is that the US government's role has been predominantly to designate the party that does these functions. In the past, that's been operators like SRI and Network Solutions, and now it's ICANN being the IANA Central Registry operator. So a lot of people ask, why is the US government doing this? And it has to do with the fact that as long as the US government has a unique role in administering all of this, there will be some people around the globe upset. Internet's global. One country having a unique role raises issues for people. And so it's a very interesting motion on behalf of the US government, and but we have to actually do it. Someone has to receive the ball. So they set some conditions. Support and enhance the multi-stakeholder model. Maintain the security, stability, and resiliency of the Internet DNS. Internet DNS means names, numbers, and protocol parameters. Meet the needs and expectations of the global customers and partners of the IANA service. So, for example, the customer for protocol parameters is the IETF, the regional registries for numbers. ICANN itself is a customer with respect to domain names. And maintain the openness of the Internet. They also said, we won't accept a government-based answer. We want to turn this over to the Internet community, and despite some people's views, that really is the Internet community. It's not a government or a group of governments. You'd think this was fairly obvious, but they stated it clearly, and that actually was a good thing, because for a lot of people, the answer was, oh, this should be turned over to a group of governments. Okay, so they also asked ICANN to kick off a process to come up with a proposal to turn its responsibilities, turn NTIA's oversight of this to the Internet community, that ICANN should convene a process, and ICANN did. They convened something called the Internet Stewardship Coordination Group, the ICG. 30 people, IETF, ISOC, ICANN, the RIRs, the GTLDs, the CCTLDs, a little bit of everyone. And the point is that this group, their job was not to develop the proposal. Their job was to help bring it together and work with the individual communities to get them to develop their portions of this stewardship transition proposal. So there's a charter, you can go look. And there's the timeline of their work. And if you look at, kind of hard to see, but I think you can figure it out. January 15th is right in the middle of that page. And it's the point in time where the communities are done developing their work and they turn it over to the ICG. Very important time, January 15th. In the numbers community, the RIRs, we actually formed a team with 15 members, 3 from each RIR, to run a process in each of the regions and combine those into a single proposal. That was an exciting process. The team was the Consolidated RIR IANA Stewardship Proposal team, or the CRISP team. There was an open mailing list. There were proposals and processes run in each of the regions. In the ARIN region, we did a survey of everyone. I announced that at the last NANOG meeting. A bunch of you participated. There were some 15 teleconferences where they hammered the 5 different proposals, because we actually had 5 different proposals, one from each of the regions, into a single unified one. The CRISP team members were really good. You can go look at the list of them. You know them. From the ARIN region, we had Bill Woodcock, let's see, John Sweeting, and Michael Abuela, who's on the ARIN staff. So the IETF also had a process. They ran something called the IANA Plan Working Group, and they've been working on that for some time, and they actually came up with a draft. It's draft IETF IANA Plan ICG response up to version 9. That actually was submitted to the ICG as the IETF portion of this program on January 6th. The RIRs, the CRISP team, on behalf of the number community, submitted its proposal January 15th. The names community has some challenges. A lot more money involved, a lot more points of view. Depending on how you've seen the last 15 years of ICANN's history, you may have a different insight as to what needs to be fixed. So there's a group called the Cross Community Working Group, the CWG. They are still working on their submission. We don't have that yet. There was a draft in December, very interesting draft that proposed new bodies, several of them, new structures, and that's still being worked in that group. Last week, on Tuesday, Larry Strickland, who's the Assistant Secretary Director of NTIA for the Department of Commerce, spoke at the State of the Net conference in DC. And he actually said a few things, but he responded directly with some questions that the community should consider about the DNS portion of this transition and the draft that the CWG has put together. I've put them there. I'm not going to read them. He didn't say this draft has problems. He said, here's some of the things that people should think about with this draft. Like, if you create new bodies to solve an accountability problem, how do you know the new bodies are actually accountable? And so there's some valid input there. The DNS part of this is a work in progress, and we have to get all of it together to get one proposal that NTIA can look at, meet their criteria, and say, okay, we're not going to run this anymore. We see that the respective communities are providing the level of oversight. They now are the ones contracting for IANA functions. Victory conditions. A proposal to NTIA by July 15th, which meets their conditions and provides transition of the stewardship to the global internet community. That proposal needs community support. Literally, NTIA has to know that the community in the IETF, in the community working on number resources, addresses, and ASNs, and in the DNS community, that they support the resulting proposal. Now, this is where you come in, because I have no idea if you support this proposal or not. Absolutely none. Some of you answered a survey, some of you gave input. It's a proposal. It's out there. It's back one slide. It's right there for the numbers resource anyway. And for the IETF portion of it, if you happen to be interested in how the IETF's doing theirs, you folks have to get involved. You have to get involved and say you do support it. You have to get involved and say you don't support it. This is important because NTIA needs a body of record that knows that they can do this safely. Now, it's possible that the proposal put together is completely no good. I don't know. If it is, you folks need to say that. It could be it's wonderful. It could be that it's wonderful, but you still want the U.S. government involved. All of these are valid conditions, but input is needed, okay? This is pretty important because imagine yourself as the U.S. government trying to figure out if you should take this and relinquish it to the Internet community. You want to know the Internet community believes that this is the right way to do it or not. So it's input time. How can you do that? Well, there will be, obviously, when this gets finalized, there will be a comment period. That's one way to do it. Also, Department of Commerce, NTIA, is, you know, right down in Washington. Easy to go find the Department of Commerce and talk to them and have a great time. You can explain what you think of the process, but involvement is pretty important at this point. Okay, potential implications. Successful transition, that'd be pretty cool. It would say the Internet's grown up and we don't need the U.S. government to be the anchor pin in all of this. The community has got structures it believes in. A failure to transition would be interesting too. The U.S. government said it's willing to get out of this. If the U.S. government says, well, the resulting proposal's no good, or if the community says the resulting proposal's no good, there are a lot of governments who think this should be turned over to a government model. Even though it's specifically ruled out to the NTIA. That's also another possibility. And so if we don't go ahead with the transition, we really don't know what happens. We don't know if the U.S. government keeps doing it. We don't know if international discussions spin up. But the fact is, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether or not you like the resulting proposal and that your input is being heard in this process. I think that's it. Thank you. Questions? Okay. Yes, Mr. Hannigan.
Hi, Martin Hannigan, Akamai Technologies. John, can you clarify Secretary Strickland's comment a little bit? It sounds like he said having the RIRs oversee themselves may be an issue.
So his questions back here were specifically about the DNS portion of the DNS portion of the, I guess it's a laser pointer. That's the CWG draft. Those are the only comments we've seen from NTIA right now. And those are predominantly about the DNS community's proposal. I haven't seen any comments from NTIA either about the IETF's portion, the protocol parameters, or the CRISP team proposal for the RIR numbers community. Other than acknowledging, he acknowledged in his remarks, and you can go, they're on the NTIA website, you can go look. He acknowledged that 2 of the 3 communities have submitted a proposal. The only one he commented on was the CWG draft, which was a working draft for names.
So once the transition does happen, what is the oversight for the RIRs?
So the question that comes up is, right now there's a contract, an IANA functions contract, which has a statement of work that provides for 3 different areas. It has a renewal option as well, two-year renewal options, starting at the end of September of 2015. So the NTIA has the option to decide it doesn't need to renew any of this because the community has taken it over, or it can renew it for 2 years with a modified statement of work. For the IETF portion, it says that the IETF will continue to provide the oversight it presently does using its SLA and accounting mechanisms through its MOU. For the RIRs, it says we'll set up something similar to what the IETF has with an SLA and a reporting function, and that'll be reviewed, and there'll also be a community-based team that'll periodically get together, not just the RIR staff and executive body, but a community, membership-based community, get together and look at that as well. And for the DNS portion, it's got 4 or 5 different bodies, and it's still in flux. So you should go look at the CRISP team draft to see specifically what it calls for. That would be what NTIA is looking at in July to try to figure out whether it can relinquish this or whether it needs to renew it.
So I read the proposal. It's okay. I think, though, that there has been some noise about an extension of the process for some period of time, and if you're looking for feedback, I do support that extension. Thank you.
Okay. I don't want any feedback because I'm not giving any input to this and I'm not giving any feedback to anyone. But NTIA is the type of party you should. and you should tell them why. Obviously, the DNS community might need some more time. The question is whether or not the rest of us do. Yes, front and center.
Peter Timish with Adrex. I just want to make the NANOG community very aware that there are two other portions involved here. The U.S. Congress had last December passed as part of the Omnibus Budget Act that it prohibited NTIA to spend any money that was allocated or assigned money on this transition.
Right.
And Secretary Strickling, I think it was 2 weeks ago, basically clearly spoke that he will not break that. He recognizes that as the rule of law, he will follow that. As part of that, there is also a Washington Post editorial. It was in the beginning of January that has something that we also believe in, and my business is about stability in this system, and it's been stable for 30 years, is that there's too much haste here. They're trying to fit this thing into a short time frame, and everyone's trying to run around trying to push this through, where there's a mechanism the NTIA can extend for 2 additional years, because the contract expires September 30th of this year, that they should just issue a 2-year extension. It's not that anyone's against transition, it's you can't put toothpaste back in a tube. And unfortunately here, there is a risk of falling off a cliff and hoping that it's a bed of pillows on the bottom. And with the stability that everyone in this room enjoys, haste is not a good thing here. So we as a company and our community, we're trying to get people to rally around. Don't be hasty. Let's look at possibly extending this 2 years, letting time go through the whole process, let the political process discussions happen, because they're going to happen whether we want or not. But let's not be in a hurry. And unfortunately, everyone's trying to jam everything through to make an arbitrary deadline.
Something on picking up on Peter's point. This transition's interesting. We don't have a model for it. And so if we do a transition, what if it doesn't go well? We actually don't know what happens. We literally don't know how to unwind this. So the importance of having confidence in whatever we transition to is very high. We have to all be very confident in what we transition. The other point, last week at the State of the Net address, Larry Strickland, in charge of NTIA for this, did speak about the congressional omnibus bill, and he said, quite frankly, NTIA will not spend money. They see that point blank in the omnibus bill. They will not spend funds working on the transition. But he also noted that Congress doesn't expect them to be idle, because it requires them to give periodic reports to Congress between now and the end of the fiscal year. So they are still involved, they are still monitoring it, they are still responding to questions, because they can't give a report to Congress any other, periodic updates to Congress any other way. You can find his State of the Net remarks online, again, at NTIA. Okay, I think we're getting close to lunch, but I'm going to close the mics after the next minute. Go ahead.
Hi, Joe Catapano, ICANN. I've met many of you, but not as many as I'd like to. I just want to echo John's comments that this is the time we really need everybody to be involved. And if you're not sure how you can be involved or you have questions, please come find me. I've been tweeting out a lot of the proposals as John was sort of rattling them off. You know, you can direct message me on Twitter and we'll find a time to meet, or find me in the halls. Also, I know a couple other my colleagues from the other departments at ICANN are presenting. You know, they know how to get in touch with me if for some reason you can't track me down, but it's a really important time, so thanks.
Yeah. Similarly, if people have questions, jcurran@aran.net, you know how to reach me. I'm available anytime. ARAN itself doesn't have a position on this. People are surprised by that. This is about oversight of the system. It's really up to you folks to provide that input. It's not up to ARAN to provide that input. We're part of the system, so you folks need to get involved, provide comments, pay attention when the unified response comes out in June, and make sure you're comfortable with what's going on. Okay, thank you for everyone. That concludes my presentation.